How's it going, everybody? The following is my first interview that I have published exclusively on X and Rumble after I was banned from YouTube. If you want the full uncensored conversation with former UN weapons inspector and U.S. Marine Scott Ritter, subscribe to my X Premium for $3 or join my Locals or Patreon, which you can find linked in my bio. Otherwise, please enjoy this portion of our conversation, which is an incredibly detailed and insightful interview about Scott's views on the war on Gaza and Israeli war crimes and updates about the Russian special military operation in Ukraine. Lastly, be sure to drop a like on this video, share it far and wide, and clip it and post it wherever you can, YouTube, TikTok. It's important to get as many eyes on the truth as possible when the censors are attacking us more than ever before. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to The Dive. I've been away since my YouTube channel with 300,000 subscribers was banned, but that's really not a surprise to me or I think anyone who understands what this government is doing to truth tellers like Julian Assange, for example. So I'm happy to be back now to discuss really pressing issues such as the situation in Russia and the unfolding situation in Israel and Gaza with none other than our incredible guest for today, former UN weapons inspector and U.S. Marine Scott Ritter. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, look, I want to touch on all these subjects and everything that's developing in this multipolar world that's taking shape. But your comments and your commentary on the situation in Gaza I've found to be really insightful. And I first want to discuss something that you wrote on your website, Scott Ritter Extra. You said, "I no longer stand with Israel." Can you talk about that and briefly, or not briefly, just go into full detail, why you no longer, I guess, stand with Israel?
Well, I mean, look, I have to admit to my deficiencies as a human being, I guess. And that doesn't mean that I'm deficient for supporting Israel. I spent a lot of time in Israel. From 1994 to 1998, I was the lead liaison between the United Nations Special Commission and Israeli intelligence on issues of great sensitivity regarding Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. And I traveled to Israel frequently, and I fell in love with Israel. I mean, I love the Israeli people. How can you not? They are well-educated. They're like Americans with funny accents, and many of them have better American accents than Americans do because they are Americans. But I fell in love with the country. I fell in love with the history. I'm a historian. I'm not overly religious, but you cannot but reflect on the Bible, on the Quran, on the Torah, because you're there where it happened, where everything that's written about in the Bible happened right there in the Holy Land. And it was just fascinating to see that. And I was also in love with the resilience of the Israeli people, because when I was there from 1994 to 1998, virtually every time I visited, a horrific terrorist act took place. Hamas was blowing up buses, blowing up restaurants. And what I saw wasn't the people that let it break them down. I mean, how it could break you down. I mean, to wake up every morning to have a bus blown up. Buses were blowing up 100 yards from my hotel. A restaurant that I ate in the day before got blown up the next day. It was just a roll of the dice that I wasn't, one of these victims. And so I saw these people pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and get on with life. But it wasn't getting on with life with revenge. They wanted peace. They recognized what Hamas was doing. Hamas was trying to undermine the Oslo Accords. Oslo I, Oslo II was put in motion by Yitzhak Rabin, a prime minister who was a warrior, a man who had gone to war against Palestine, who now realized that the only future for Israel, the only future, was a path of peace where Palestine and Israel coexisted side by side as equals. And he was working in that direction. It was a difficult struggle, but he's working. He was killed while I was there too. I was in Israel the day he was assassinated. And it hurt me as much as it hurt the Israelis, because I truly had bought into this notion of, Israel working towards peace with the Palestinians. I stopped traveling to Israel in 1998. Benjamin Netanyahu was the prime minister. And I watched Israel do a flip on everything they claim to stand for regarding the Palestinians. But, out of sight, out of mind is what they say. I left and I got involved in different things. I was trying to stop a war in Iraq, and then I was involved in trying to educate people about the reality of the Iranian nuclear program. And lately, I've been doing the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. It's a full-time job. So when this Gaza event exploded, it wasn't as though I had been sitting there following this stuff. I had peripherally, but it wasn't. And my initial inclination was going back to my roots. I like Israel, and I still do. I love the Israeli people, and I still do. But I can't sit there and watch what's happening to Gaza. I'm not condoning Hamas. Guys, if you're not listening to me, they tried to kill me. Not me personally, but I could have died. I was close to these things when they blew up. They don't care. They're indifferent. They just want to bring death and destruction. So I condemn Hamas with all of my heart, all of my heart. But the Palestinian people, how can you condemn them? And then you start digging into what's going on. Was this really what they called, this deliberate act of terrorism? Or was this a prison break? Was Hamas tired of, for 75 years, living in an open air concentration camp, being bullied? And the more you dig, the worse the answers get. Mm-hmm. And that happened to me. I started digging and digging and digging because I want to like the Israelis. I want to support the Israelis. I've been standing with them this entire time. The Gulf War, my Gulf War, it was a big Gulf War. Everybody had their own Gulf War. The one I was in was involved in stopping missiles from landing in Israel. That was my Gulf War. Yeah, I'm an American defending Americans' policy objectives, but the objective was to keep Israel out of the war, and you do that by stopping the missiles from landing. So indirectly, I was fighting for Israel during the Gulf War. And then my time as a weapons inspector was to keep those missiles from ever hitting Israel again. So I'm on the side of keeping Israel safe and secure. I don't want to create the conditions where Israel is subjected to attacks like what happened on October 17th. However, if you kick a hornet's nest long enough, the hornets are going to come out and sting you. And Israel doesn't have any right now to cry. Not after what I've read, not after what I've learned, after what I've seen. I've been blind, just like many Americans have. 2014 should have woken us up as to what Israel was doing in Gaza, but we bought into the Israeli mystique. 2020, 2020, 2021, it's a never-ending cycle of Israel taking a front and punishing the Palestinian people. And if you dig deep enough, you realize that this is done on purpose. There is a policy, the Dahiwa policy. Mowing the grass is the official policy of the Israeli state. What does mowing the grass mean? Mowing down the civilians. They don't care about civilians. They're going to bomb them. They're going to slaughter them to try and break the spirit, not of the terrorists, but of the civilians. They want the Palestinians to stop resisting Israeli occupation. If the founding fathers of America were like that, we'd have stopped resisting British tyranny and there wouldn't be an America. But the founding fathers said, no, tyranny must always be resisted. And we fought a revolution to liberate ourselves. Do you understand the psychology of the Palestinians? Occupied people, those in Gaza looking out, watching the Israelis occupy the land that their fathers owned, that their fathers tilled, their grandfathers. Many of their grandfathers were slaughtered by the Israelis to kick the Palestinians out, what they call the Nakba, the catastrophe. The more you dig, the more you realize that the Israeli position is indefensible. So I'm late to the game. I admit it. I'm late to the Palestinian cause, but I'm in with full feet. And I'm not doing this with, shallowness. I used to be a friend of Israel. I'm not an enemy of Israel. I don't wish harm on the Israeli people. But I will tell you this, I will never put Israeli interests over the interests of the Palestinian people ever again. I am Team Palestine until which time they are given the dignity that they deserve as a people who must have a nation that stands equal with the Israeli nation and all other nations in the community of nations in the world today.
That's really great to hear. And I love that, there's a lot of people in the world today that are, for whatever reason, too egotistical, too embarrassed to ever say, maybe I've learned more stuff, or maybe, I've changed my opinion on something, or maybe the way in which events are unfolding right now have caused me to not say, oh, I was wrong before, but I've just changed my mind. If you've enjoyed this conversation thus far, be sure to join my X Premium for $3 or join my Locals or Patreon to get my full uncensored conversation with our guest.